folks, and welcome to another Real and Raw conversation. This time, someone coming from the cinema field or the film industry, which is something new. I wanted to. I was trying to find the right individual, and I think I did. I know him in person, but let's just disclose that. We were friends when we both lived here in Ireland, so we haven't chat for a good few years. So it will be interesting to see how we get on after I don't know how many years, 5, 10, I can't remember. So it's Giorgio Paoletti. He is a film director. He's also an actor and a screenwriting. So he does a lot of roles within the cinema field. So it'll be good to understand how is cinema perceived from different angles, especially in the times of live streaming, in the times of Netflix, which I think it's kind of threatening the existence of cinema as such. But I want Giorgio to tell his view on that. I think he's more into the subject than myself. I'm just a spectator, let's put it like that. So that will be the main topic. But besides this, we're also going to talk about creativity because he just launched a new YouTube channel. He decided, similar to myself, to divert from the corporate environment and try to do something that makes sense to him. And he also lived abroad. So we have a lot of things in common. So he lived here in Ireland. I met him in Dublin. Turned out that he also lived in Cork, like me, not at the same time, and he spent some time in Sweden and the UK. He's now back in Italy, so I'll be also very keen to understand what are the feelings to go back to your home country. So there's a lot to go through the next 1 hour, 1.5, we'll see. And I want you to stay around, and if you enjoy what we do, make sure to press those 3 buttons below. So if you haven't subscribed, I'll be very thankful if you can. If you enjoy what we do here, please let us know by pressing the like button below. And if you know someone who is into this sort of real conversations, I'll be very thankful if you can share it, because the more, the better. Without any delay, Giorgio, you're very welcome to my show.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
So let's start with your return to Italy. So when was that? Because I don't remember exactly the year. So if you can tell us what happened and what were the sentiments at the beginning, and how did it change since you were in Rome?
Yeah, it was a combination of factors. I left the 1st of April 2018. It was Easter that day. The thing is, I'm very grateful to Ireland, where I lived about 9 years in my life, and 1.5 more or less in Cork, and 7.5 in Dublin. The last year in Dublin for me was pretty tough because I was doing something that turned out to be a bit overwhelming for me. I was producing a feature film. That was my first feature film. I had done a bunch of short films before, but there was this challenge launched by the Dublin Filmmakers Collective to make feature film on top of working 40 hours a week in an office. I had an office job. I was working for a corporation, a multinational company. So I basically didn't have time to breathe, because every single second I had outside the office, I was working on this project that went on for another 2 years of post-production afterwards. So that was pretty tough. One day I felt, I'm not saying I'm burnt down, but I felt like I needed to take a break from that life, and I needed to reinvent myself somehow. And I was thinking about a couple of possible options at that point. I was thinking maybe I will be a professional editor, video editor, or a teacher. I had a chance to teach before. I had taught. Hi, Keiko. I had taught when I was in Sweden, Italian. I was teaching Italian there for almost 2 years. I had a chance to be a trainer in Ireland for Google Maps for a year. And I enjoyed both jobs. So I thought, okay, I'm going to take a break. As soon as I finish the production, I will come up with the post-production of this film elsewhere. And I will try to reinvent myself. So I I did them both. I had a friend that was working for national television here, and he took me to the place where editors work. I was shadowing them, and I was thinking, okay, if that's a professional editing, I don't want to be there either. In the meantime, I qualified to teach, and right after I finished studying for that, I started teaching. And first, I was teaching in public schools, so-called Cambridge schools. So that there are these schools that are public schools, but with an extra fee. The students get 3 extra hours of English a week. That's for elementary classes and middle classes, so students between 6 and 14. And I was teaching English and an extra subject that was mathematics or global perspectives. That was my favorite, to be honest, as an extra subject. So I was doing that.
Sorry,
Yes.
to cut you off. What is it, global perspectives?
Basically, it is a way to introduce 13-year-old students to a very light version of geopolitics. So they study history, obviously. So you develop history from a more critical thinking point of view.
Yeah.
So at the time, I remember, for example, when the Ukraine war started, that was one of the subjects that we discussed there. And the kids were much more informed than I could have been when I was their age, because obviously they're exposed to a lot more information now. I was reading that now they're exposed 40 times more information than it was for me, in the analog time, before the digital age. So it was interesting because they had a lot of information, but they couldn't really process that information in a way that you could call critical thinking. So you were trying to give them some elements to put the stuff together. So that was the other thing. And 3 years ago, a little over 3 years ago, I started teaching at university. I had applied for teaching international relations. They said, you don't have a PhD in that, so we cannot hire you for that role. But on the other hand, you can teach basic courses of English. So I started teaching there too, and now in September there will be another university. So I don't teach one of the previous 2, the other one, yes, and I will teach on another university starting the 8th of September. So that is the other thing. And after 6 years, I quit teaching elementary and middle classes because it became bit too much for me, so I couldn't do them both. I love teaching young learners because they are obviously like sponge, so you give them information, they absorb. But at some point I had to do too much, so I quit one and I kept the other. So that's what I'm doing at the moment.
And how does it feel to be away from the corporate environment?
Well, I need to say that I'm very grateful to the country first, so Ireland there, and also to the companies, because they gave me a chance to work, to meet people, make friends, socialize, save money. So that I have to say. Now, that being said, I have to say that after a few years, I felt like I was not in my place. I mean, I didn't feel like I belonged there. But I realized that when one day I was having dinner with a friend that lives in Dublin, even now, he was in the same building where I was. He was living 3 floors above my apartment. So we used to have dinner quite often together. We became friends. And one day he said this thing that rang some bell, he said, I don't think I'm cut out for multinational companies. And I said, why do you say that? And he said, because even if I work a year in a company and there's somebody, a newbie, coming up, and then after 2 months, they already have a higher position than mine. That means that they are more suitable to work there than I am, and maybe I should be doing something else. He was also a musician, so I was saying, why don't you go play in Henry Street or somewhere?
Yeah.
And he said, yeah, but I don't think I could manage the rain and wind and stuff. So I said, okay, so maybe you should question your passion, how passionate you are about these things, if these obstacles seem not to be possible to overcome, And they got me thinking. I had a friend at the time, Maria, that quit her very well-paid job in a company. She was IT, to become a teacher. And so obviously she was earning much less than before from that moment on. But she seemed happier. And I was like, how did you do that? And she explained to me the steps, because when I arrived in Dublin, I was also applying to be a teacher there, but I didn't have papers, certifications which stated that I was a teacher. So I said I have experience, but it didn't seem to qualify if I didn't have any certification which proved what I was saying. So I had to do that. And at that point, I had to choose whether to do it there, but I thought I needed a proper break, so I came to do it here in Rome. So but I have to say that that decision I never regretted, because the money was a little tight at some point, but never in a way to change my lifestyle. I mean, I've always done the same things, So on the other hand, I felt like that was my job. I mean, interacting with people, confronting, getting to know the mentality of these digital natives, and trying to exchange, not just to teach from a pedestal, but just to exchange things. And in fact, that was very rewarding and satisfactory, because I had a very good rapport with a lot of students, and that I enjoyed a lot.
Yeah. And you mentioned something that I would like to highlight, the live examples. It's very good to see someone next to us doing something that we are interested in. Because it's one thing to see it on YouTube or on a screen. The other one is when a fellow or a friend of a friend is going the route that we would like to pursue. Because then we realize it's possible. We can see the steps that someone took, and nothing wrong really happened to them. Nothing outrageous. Nothing really scary. They just get on with life. Of course, there are obstacles along the way. But if you see that it's happening with let's call it, in the lack of a better term, real people, then you realize you can be one of them. So I appreciate that you mentioned that. In terms of going back to Italy, because you were abroad for a decade or even more.
Yeah, about 15 years, yes.
Yeah, that's quite a lot. So I'm always wondering, because I haven't experienced that myself. So every time I encounter one, like, I cannot help myself. I need to ask, how is it to go back to your home country after so long?
All right, that's what happened to me. The first weeks and the first few months when I was, requalifying, taking courses, it felt like a long holiday, When I realized that I was really back in that country, it felt like a shock, because I didn't fit in anymore. And so I was just looking for other people like me, that were sort of outcast and different from the average person you meet in the street, and still is something that I never got used to. I have to say that after less than a year, I was about to move to Malaga, because there was this application process going on. I went for an interview there. They basically said that I had a job, but before the thing finalized, they told me that the teacher they had before changed her mind, and so she was not leaving anymore, and so there was no spot anymore. So at that point, I thought, okay, I'm gonna do the same here if I find a school where they hire me, and I found one, and I was still thinking it's temporary. Then there was one thing called COVID that came up, changed everything, because I was stuck for 2 years. I couldn't travel between 2020 and 2022. I never took a flight, which is kind of crazy for me. When I was in Dublin, I was traveling every 3 months or something, and I was stuck. When I finished and when I could finally travel again, say 2022, I got that offer for teaching at university. I had to make a decision. I didn't feel like, the strength of restarting again after so many years. So I thought, okay, I can try seeing what this university deal is, and see how my life goes. Then something strange happened, because my best friend moved back after 15 years from where he was living. He was living in Spain. And we were both a couple of outcasts. Like, can you believe we are back here? We're not 20 anymore, but we're both back for different reasons. But we sort of help each other to rebuild a life, in a way. Yes, that was strange.
Yeah.
Anyways, still strange. Yes.
Yeah. I guess it takes time, but it's very different if there is someone on the same boat. So you are not on your own. You have one of your best friends experiencing something different, something similar, which is great. Before we go to the places where we lived in the past, I want to focus on your film experience. So let's go back to the younger Giorgio, because you are still young, the younger Giorgio. So how did you get into movies and the film sector as such? Do you recall like the first moment that you thought to yourself, this is something I would like to do in the future? Was there a sort of aha moment?
No. When I was very young, I used to go to the movies with my dad because he was very passionate about it. His cousin was working with some of the top film directors in this country, and so he was telling me a lot of things about, this movie was by William Friedkin, this was by Francis Ford Coppola, and blah 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 blah. This is Don Siegel, this film we should watch together. So we did a lot of things together since when I was first time to the cinema. I think it was Back to the Future. No, it was the second Indiana Jones, actually. But we went quite often. So I had a great memory. So that is the thing. I watch a film, I remember that. I remember the lines, I remember the shots, I remember these things. But that was it. I never thought I was going to go to filmmaking. When I was 19, I started writing. It was more like short novels and stuff. That was the thing. Something changed when I was about to leave Sweden. I had lived in Sweden for 5 years. First year, I was an Erasmus student. Then I went back. I studied, I worked, and I was there for a while. 1 year before I left, I was sure I was leaving soon because I got tired of the country. I had enjoyed it before, but I was not enjoying the country anymore. So I wanted to leave. And I was thinking, I need to express why. I need to do it visually. So I was trying to set up a team to come up with something that was in between a documentary and something fictional. And everybody at first told me, do you have experience? I said, no, but I can research, study it. Somebody was very skeptical, like, why does he want to do something he has no experience in? But they saw that my tenacity about the thing. So I convinced a lot of people to give me credit or give me a chance anyway. And at the end of the day, we managed to do it. Now, if I look at it, and you can still look at it, I feel like embarrassed to have produced something like that. But if I think that I had no experience whatsoever, and none of the people I work with had any experience. To do that, I don't feel so embarrassed as I should feel. You know, I'm not that proud, but I had to start somewhere, and I started there. Then I left. That project took me a year. Then I left. I went to Ireland. I started making some short films. Then a friend took me to this group, the Dublin Filmmakers Collective. And with them, I worked. I set up a team. We made a few short films. One was selected by the Galway Fleadh. That was one of the most important festivals. They were coming back to me like, we want to work with you. So when they launched the challenge for the, at the same time, I was studying a lot. I took courses in the screenwriting. I took courses in filmmaking. I was watching a lot of films. I was watching reviews to see the film from a different perspective, like how it's shot, how it's photographed, all the things that I didn't pay much attention before. Before it was the story for me. Now it's still the story. I mean, if film doesn't intrigue me, I don't go further than that. But if a film catches my attention, then the second time I watch it, I want to see everything, you know, in terms of editing, camera moves, acting, how they direct the actors in terms of acting that way. Compare how did that actor acted in that movie as opposed to a different movie. And all these things that contribute to give you some reference when it was your turn to direct. But I have to say that everything happened in Dublin. Then when I moved back to Rome, and I had to go on another 2 years with the post-production of the feature film that was eventually released, I found a group of people, video makers, filmmakers here in Rome. I worked with them. I went on for a few years. But 4 years ago, I made a decision that was that if I don't meet people that are crazy passionate about this, like I believe I am, I don't want to do that kind of projects anymore, because I need to see someone that has the desire, the necessity to say something, to express themselves. It's not just like, I want to say that I made a film, whatever that is, and maybe one day I will work in this industry like a regular job. That's not what attracts me. I want to see someone that really loves to do what they're doing, because making a film is tough. It is very tough. Even if you have a serious budget, it's a tough job. But especially when you don't have any budget or a very limited budget. And if you don't have that drive, if you don't have that passion, you can get bored very, very easily. Or if the objective is just to finish something, to say I finished something, I'm not interested. So that is my point of view nowadays.
Yeah. Now, it totally resonates with the way I perceive cooperation, because, you know, I do some things on my own, but I also do others with a team. And I realize that it's not much about skills or talent, but personal motivation, how people put themselves, how much skin they put on the game. Like, I don't care if they are a genius of some sort or how much gifted they are. If they are not really putting passion, then it's irrelevant. You need someone who is willing to die, you know, just to make it happen. As you said, no budget, no problem. We go ahead. We only have 1 day a week. No problem. We're going to use it from sunrise to sunset, and we might have a sandwich in between. So you need to see those efforts that will help somehow compensate the lack of resources or even the lack of skills, because at the end of the day, all we need is people who are dedicated. Talking of skills, what makes a good movie and the other way around?
Right. Now, in general, if you watch a blockbuster film or if you watch an independent movie, it doesn't make a big difference. A movie has to assess, has to claim something to me. I mean, you don't have to be afraid to take a position when it comes to the subject you're telling. I mean, you are telling a story. So what doesn't convince me is those films that don't want to expose themselves, right? They want to give you a clear point of view. I mean, it could be that the author itself is not certain about something, it just wants to doubt it. But on the other hand, sometimes I notice that directors are afraid to be reviewed badly for just taking a side in subjects, you know. And I need people that are not afraid. So if you want to say something, say it. Don't refrain from saying something just because you're scared that somebody's going to blame you about that thing. You know, I was watching a film lately because yesterday, for example, a friend that is also a video maker was asking me, can you recommend any films you saw lately that you enjoyed? It was a couple of weeks ago. I watched a film that won a bunch of Oscars, and usually I'm very prejudiced about that because I don't believe in awards. You know, I think awards don't indicate that the film is a great film. Not necessarily, anyway. It can happen, but it's not that common in my experience. But this one is Anora, the one very important Academy Awards in, I think it was February or March. So finally I decided to watch it, and the way it criticizes the direction the world is going nowadays, because it shows certain attitudes that people see other people doing things that they wouldn't like, but they are in an upper scale or on an higher social position compared to them. And so they try to imitate them just to be nothing but the unfortunate companion of those who keep those behaviors. And the protagonist, she doesn't understand that until the very end. So she regards the guy that is just one of the guys that work for that family as like, you must be, she says to him, you must be a perv, you must be desperate just because you are in the chain of command in the last position. And then in the end, she realizes, wait, maybe I misjudged the entire thing. That is interesting because it looks like she never learned the lesson until the very last shot. And the very last shot, you realize that it breaks down to her. And you can see that is an independent film. You can see that the director did it mostly all by himself. Because if a studio had worked heavily on that, it would have been different. You know, that is my point.
Yeah, that's interesting because, you know, I'm always very reluctant to talk about movies in the way you do, because I don't know what is to be behind the scenes. Like I'm an author, I'm a writer. I published 12 books, so I have some degree of authority to talk about the process of writing. And you know, when you are doing it yourself, you know how hard it is, you know the obstacles, you know the challenges. So it's very hard to listen people just saying random things about something you have been doing for decades, and not one day a week, but almost every day of your life. So when it comes to cinema, I'm always very humble because I never been on the other side. Like on music, I had some experience when I was young. So I have some understanding of the dynamics between the musicians on the stage, you know, the emotions, the expectations and all that. But I know it's very, very complex. So if you haven't been doing it yourself, I think you always need to think twice before judging. Let's say painting. Like I don't think you paint. None of us paint. So we cannot say a lot about it. So how do you go about people approaching movies like they know it all?
Well, I can tell you something. Sometimes it doesn't happen very often, but when we meet with my sister, we watch some films together. It happens maybe 2-3 times a year. And my sister would have been an amazing script supervisor. She would have been incredible. She has an attention to details that I've never seen in anybody. So whenever there's something that indicates lack of continuity, she spots it at once. But obviously, she's never been on a set, so she doesn't understand why that happens. So she looks at me and she says, "Oh, look, the guy was like that, and now he's like this. So that's bad editing." And I go to her and say, "That's not bad editing. That's lack of footage." So they don't have a cutaway, or they don't have the shot that gives continuity. You know, that is the problem there. And they decide whether to use a B-roll or a cutaway, or hope that nobody notices or doesn't pay much attention. But even if you watch, for example, The Wolf of Wall Street, you will see that the initial dialogue between Jonah Hill and Leonardo DiCaprio, there's a lot of lack of continuity, but nobody pays attention because you think, okay, it's Scorsese, one of the greatest directors in the world. I mean, can I teach him how to do his job? He knows how to do his job. They didn't have that one, and they went without it. So it's the little details that you tend to notice, or maybe when the photography is a little bit different, the colors change when they're not supposed to change, that they shot maybe another day and they didn't have the same light. These are the things that, but at the end of the day, what the film gives you is the same thing. I mean, the evaluation that any spectator or somebody that worked in that industry, they count for the same in terms of what the film gives you. I mean, if you enjoy it, if it gets you, if you're compelled, that's what counts. Then once you are compelled, you're caught up, you can go further and see other things, which are just not very relevant for those who don't do this job, or a job in that industry. But it might be interesting for those who are geeks, that they watch the film together, say, "Oh, did you see that? Did you notice that tracking shot? There was some problem there," but it's not that relevant, I would say, when you watch a film.
Yeah. So going to this average person avenue and bringing the main topic, Netflix, because like these days, more than ever, everyone consumes movies. They are accessible, they are at your fingertips, and it's a very different thing than back in the days. Like, you need to, let's say you were young and broke, you need to get your parents to give you a $5 to go to the cinema, and then you need to find someone to go with, because most people wouldn't go by themselves. Now it's very different for the young generation. They don't know what to do. Let's say this evening, they're not watching this podcast, and they are looking for an alternative. There are plenty of competition with Netflix. Like, you just open and there are, I don't know, 500 available movies, or even more. I'm not that familiar with the platform. How much that of a threat is that to cinema, as a cinema experience of going to the cinema itself and enjoy the movie in a traditional way?
But that is the same problem we have with a lot of art expressions, I think. If you think about music, for example, when I was a kid, I used to have cassettes, like tapes, then CDs. But I had the physical thing in my hand. So I used it until I consumed it, and it didn't work anymore because I used it 30 times in a row. And I knew every single track inside out. And that is how I remember that. So when they play that song and some people looks at me and I'm singing that song, they're like, "How do you know that?" I said, "Because when I was a kid, I literally consumed that record, that song I know inside out, or the record I know from beginning to the end." But if I use Spotify, which I do, I have to admit, it goes, I may tell him to play a band or a genre, and then it goes from this song to the other song to the other song. For someone that didn't grow up with that, don't stay. It's just like Rutger Hauer said in Blade Runner, like tears in rain. They vanish. They disappear. They don't stay. You need to have the physical thing. I mean, this is the book I'm reading at the moment. But if I had the ebook, I don't think it would be the same thing. I need to have the paper, to touch it, to see, to bump it, to run into it. So I know, okay, I can read that. I have that, you know, because otherwise I grew up like that. So it doesn't work with me any other way. And that's one thing. For cinema, well, I think I'm afraid to say that TV series are much more popular than films nowadays, because people think, okay, I can watch this, it lasts 30 minutes, 45 minutes, and then if I like it, I can go on and watch another one, or I can stop, I can pause it, I can use my phone if I have to respond, and all these things. And I have to say that TV series nowadays are much better than what it was when I was 10 to 11 years old, when I was watching. We used to call it telefilm in Italy when they were very popular at the time. They always existed, just that they had a vertical approach instead of a horizontal approach. Now there's a continuation between one episode and the other. But that's the thing. They use also part of the cinematic language to give a patina of cinema, but then they use the soap opera drama to keep you caught up to the stories. And that's what works with TV series, which I also watch, not as much as other people I know, but every once in a while I watch a TV series. But the problem with cinema is that when I was 6 years old, I used to go with my parents. When I was 11, I started going with my friends, 11, 12, 13 to 17, for example. And it always was the idea of going to a dark room where you had a sort of therapeutic session where everybody was experiencing the same thing, the dark, the focus on the thing, no distraction, no phones, no nothing. So you couldn't help seeing what it was shown on a big screen. That was the experience. And then you had to comment it when you went outside, when the movie was finished. You had to debate the things with other people, sometimes with your friends, sometimes with people you didn't know. The last time I experienced something like that, and I was very happy, it was it 2 years ago or 3 years ago, when I went to watch Oppenheimer, that I saw people outside the cinema discussing the movie, and I was like, oh, that reminds me of when I was a kid. I haven't
What
seen
age
this.
were those people?
Age 35, mid-30s.
Yeah, because I couldn't imagine the youngsters doing
No.
it. They'll be on their phones. Yeah.
No, but they grew up. Those who were born native, digital natives. I think cinema was never the same thing that it was for us. They grew up with cinemas that didn't show just one film, but they had already a choice. But besides that, when I was their age, it was impossible to think that pretty much at the same time that they're showing in movie theaters, I could stream HD quality at home the very same film that they're showing in cinemas, or that the film stays 3 days because then a streaming platform will show it. These things didn't exist, and these things are pretty normal nowadays. I remember when I went to see The Irishman. There are 4 or 5 cinemas in Rome that show films in the original language, and so these are the cinemas where I go. But for example, The Irishman was shown 3 days: Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and then it went straight to Netflix. And then I booked for Saturday, so I managed to watch it, but it felt like you're running after something that is drifting away. It's a completely different thing. When I was 6, films could stay 6 months up to a year in movie theaters, so you didn't have to rush. I want to watch this film. I cannot go this week. I will go next week, or we'll go next month. I can still watch it. Now it's basically impossible. Again, Blade Runner thing, Tears in Rain, because they arrive, they disappear, and you don't even notice that they were there. That is the problem, because it's not that there are not good films. There are, but the way they can impact, that has changed a lot, because the distribution system has changed a lot. So I think that is the problem.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff. So like people can watch one movie and day after they're watching something else on Amazon Prime, and then on the weekend they watch Netflix or a series. So the attention goes all over the place. Do you think cinemas can become something from the past?
Well, I think cinema will become something that goes towards theater in this sense. Theater is a thing for people, supposedly, people that belong to a certain class. They are ready to spend a certain amount of money, and they want to see a different show, something that you don't see every day. And cinema could become something like that, like only those who are interested in watching that production on a big screen, to see that the type of sound, the type of images there, and that could be eventually what's going to happen. I'm not certain about that, but it's a possibility, because I think that younger generations are used to watching things on as big that can be, 50 to 65 inches TV screen. That is the extent to what you see nowadays. And so they're not used to watching the gigantic, that don't even exist anymore, by the way, because cinemas don't have the same type of screens they used to have 40 years ago. But that is the thing, that they're not used to that. So how can you miss something you never had?
Yes.
I mean, I can miss something I had. I can miss, grunge. I can miss a certain type of thrash metal, but because I lived it. But if it was never part of my life, how can I miss something that I never had? That's my question.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the other aspect is people are not going out as we were when both of us were in our 20s, let's say, or even 30s. Because nowadays there is so much entertainment that you can have it at home. You can even interact with others, like using WhatsApp groups and having video calls. So the necessity to be out, to be in touch with people, is not that present. Of course, I'm not suggesting that the digital is a replacement, but it's somehow, or in one shape or form, it can substitute, let's say, certain days. Let's say the weather is crap or people are tired. So you know what? We just speak like this and that's it. And even to let's say, before you would go to the cinema on a date, that is not the case anymore. People even arrange dates on Netflix. That's even a thing on dates on Netflix. We all know that does it mean, in Tinder and places like that. So how do you see these things, that there was some romance about cinema and now it's used in a different way?
Well, actually, I don't want to sound like a dinosaur or something, because I think the risk is there. But I'm an analog guy in a digital age, and so I regard those things as something with very big sympathy, what used to be. But I try to understand what's going on now when I speak to younger generations, and I don't see a big difference when I speak to a middle school student or a university student. They give me the same answers. So I ask sometimes questions, they don't know that, but because I'm curious, I want to understand reality. So I say, what do you do when you have spare time? Or what is the best way to spend a Sunday afternoon where you don't have any other things to do? And they all come up with the same things. So I was like, okay, I thought when a 12-year-old student told me that they were on TikTok most of the time, it was a 12-year-old thing. But when I hear that a 20-year-old, 22-year-old student does the same thing, I start to think, okay, that's not something age related or that young age related. It's more like something of people that were born with a phone in their hand. I was not born with a phone in their hand. I had my first phone when I was 21, I think. I could have had it before, 2 or 3 years before, but I never had it. But so I was used to different things, that they have a different reality. And so I try to understand what they do, how they live, just to be able to communicate. But I realized that it's very different language. I mean, I speak German, they speak Arabic, so I try to find some common ground, and it's hard to find. I remember I had a student, a private student. She was very, very good at what she was doing. Very brilliant student. She was 16, 17 at the time. But she was coming up with, those videos on TikTok where you replay the things that other people say, trying to mumble what they say. And I was like, why do you do that? I don't know. Everybody does it. So, yeah, but why do you do that? I mean, what type of satisfaction that thing gives you? I mean, if I do something because I want to do it for some reason. And it felt like I asked a question that was never asked before. Like, I don't have to think about if there's a sense in what I'm doing, if it makes any sense. Everybody does it, so we do it. That is the thing. And I don't want to judge because I'm not part of that community, or I'm not their age. But it's hard for me to explain. Sometimes they recommend. I can tell you this. Sometimes when I was assigning some films to watch. And obviously, from their point of view, it's not wrong at all. I remember the same student told me, I'm watching very old movies, but I'm enjoying them. So, very good, very good. What did you watch that you enjoy? I watched Fight Club. I watched Usual Suspects, and I think, Jesus, she's right. I mean, for her, they are very old movies. For me, it feels like it was yesterday. And they were the films that I was watching when I was a teenager, because they stay with me. But she's right. I was 16 and I was watching a film from the late 50s or early 60s or something. It feels the same. But it's hard for me to even though I interact with them on a daily basis and I try to understand, there's a different language, and it's hard. It's complex.
Yeah. So when you are screenwriting, do you do it with the actors in mind, or do you do the casting later?
No, actually, what I try to do, I just finished a screenplay lately, but before that, I had finished this one that I was trying to give to Scorsese last year, 2 years ago. I don't remember. He came to Rome for a lecture. So I was thinking, well, maybe other people had the same idea, but I don't think they have it in English, their screenplay. So I tried to get close to him to give him my screenplay, but I couldn't get that close. But anyway,
stopped by the security.
And but you never know. I want to be ready just in case. It's not the case, but just in case. No, the process I write is that I think about a theme. And I think about people involved in a situation related to this theme. And I start from a scene, and I want to know what they're going to do. So they are going to drag me somewhere. And then I realize who they are, little by little. So at that point, is he going to do this? I mean, there is the situation. This is the obstacle they have to pursue their goal. What is he going to do? What is she going to do? What is she prepared to do? What is he prepared to do? And then depending on how they react, then you say, but you choose how they react. Yeah, it's a no, because you see the scene works better this way. I think it gives a boost that way for the theme I'm trying to develop. And so depending on how then they behave, then I start to think, okay, they probably look like this. I mean, to act like that from a a physical point of view, they must have that body, they must have that look, and so that comes afterwards. And so at the end, you can think, okay, you know what, this guy may resemble that actor, but never comes at the beginning for me. No, it's just a story that makes them act, and by the way they act, I can think of someone.
Yeah. In terms of the creation process itself, like I would be interested in understanding your routines. Like, how do you find time? What's the right headspace? Do you decide when you write, or it just
No,
happens when you're inspired?
usually I try to use summertime and Christmas break, because that's the time. Otherwise, I have really no time to do that. The problem is when I get there and my mind is blank. So what I do when my mind is blank, I go to the most creative people that I know, and instead of asking them a theme that could be interesting, you say, give me a scene that you would like to see in a film and you've never seen. So when the most creative guys in I know tell me, you know what, I would like to see they are on a train, she has a ring, you realize that she needs to get rid of it, she's running away from someone, and then she meets a guy, they get caught up in a situation, and my head starts to spin. I say, okay, that could be because that ring has a code that leads to illegal weapons, and she is traitor, she is infiltrated by secret service somewhere, and she's running away because she thinks she's been caught. And then I start to think about, but I need someone to tell me, what would you like to see as a scene that would be very intriguing for you at the beginning of a film? That is my process usually.
And how do you go about finding that person? Do you have someone in mind?
I have two or three that I know that I always like their ideas. They're very visual. So whenever I say, why don't you try writing something? No, because I see these things, but I wouldn't know how to write these things. So I think, okay, you give me something, I'll write the story. That is my process.
You mentioned already, I think like 2 or 3 times Scorsese, so I believe he is one of your main references. Would you like to add some other names of individuals that you look up?
No, I have. Yeah, I have. One day I was, also for my students, coming up with my favorite 150 bands when it comes to music, and I stopped with 100 directors. I mean, I could go on with others, but those that I really think of are divided between those already recognized and acknowledged as being big because of their history, right? For different reasons. And those who maybe are not that known, that to me are giants. And then those are the directors I really look up to. To give some names, when it comes to directors that are known by cinephiles, but maybe not by the average watcher, I would say in independent cinema, Jim Jarmusch is one of my favorite authors. I would say Nicholas Winding Refn is also someone I like very much. I like also Ari Aster, that lately has been making films that had some success. Jordan Peele is very good, who's still young. I mean, considering those that are not old. Those who are more known that I could give as reference, obviously, Coen Brothers, Tarantino, Scorsese, Paul Thomas Anderson. But I'm also a lot about this. The last 15 years, I became a lot about the classics, the real classics. I mean, if I think about the 30s, then I think about Howard Hawks, or I think about Michael Curtis. Howard Hawks is the one that made the first Scarface in 1932, just to give an idea, or The Big Sleep, one of the greatest noirs of all time in 1946. When I was mentioning Michael Curtis, he made Casablanca. He made noirs, gangster noirs in the late 30s with Humphrey Bogart and James Cagney. Or I could go on with others. But Hitchcock was a giant, definitely. I also love genre movies, authors. If you think about David Cronenberg or John Carpenter or George Romero, these are amazing directors. But there are so many. Yes. So
No, there are plenty. Yeah, you didn't refer many Italians, and I would like to understand why, because you guys have a very rich tradition. Like just keep in mind Fellini, Pasolini, and there are many others.
But, no, well, I actually, yeah, that's true. You see, I always say that my favorite director is Japanese, is Takeshi Kitano, but I don't want to sound cocky about it because I love Fellini. I really find Pasolini very interesting. I find Antonioni very interesting. I love Sergio Leone. But I was always a genre film guy. So there were these authors in the 60s and 70s that nobody knows, even in Italy. Probably in Italy, they know them even less than in the United States or in England or in France. I'm thinking about Mario Bava or Lucio Fulci, Umberto Lenzi, Sergio Martino. They were always moving from, what is doing well now? Western. So we're going to make Western movies. What's now? Oh, it's thrillers. Now it's horrors. So they were moving from one genre to another, depending on what was selling at the time. But just because they were capable of, with just little money, to make great films. I think Dario Argento was the most famous of these groups because he worked with different budgets compared to the others. No, I like Italian cinema, but Italy was famous for comedy, Italian comedy. That was very, very harsh. So at the time, in the 60s and still the 70s, it could really criticize society in a very harsh way that was still amusing in a way. So you could have a laugh, but it was very bitter, like, okay, that is, but we are exactly like that. So they're describing something unpleasant in a funny way that made you realize. That is what I love about genre, that you are caught up in something, so the message can arrive stronger because you're interested in the story, and then the message arrives and you get it harder. If I were reading a blog, you would say, okay, this thing good, this thing is right, this thing is wrong. You say, okay, you think that, I think the other thing. But if I show you a story where this thing comes hard, not being put in the front, but in the background, not in the foreground, then maybe that works better in that sense. Now, I'm not a big comedy guy, that is the problem with the Italian cinema. Yes.
Yeah. So I will pick a non-comedian director to get your thoughts on something that you approach, which is criticizing society and being object of censorship for not being one of them. So let's pick Pasolini. Like, how would you imagine the general public reaction if Pasolini will be around in these times of cancellation?
No, I think Pasolini would be the most extreme version, but there are a lot of other works, a lot of other films that could never be produced, not even conceived nowadays. I can imagine giving a screenplay to a producer, so I was thinking to make this film. Think about Salò, for example, in that case. The reaction would be like this. Like, we're never going to make it. This doesn't please anyone. Yeah, but the objective is to upset people. And why would we want to upset people? The objective is to please people, to caress them where they want to be caressed, not to question their certainties. That's the world nowadays. If you want to be harsh, you go use a nickname that they can identify you, go on social network and say that the good person is a rapist or a killer. But in real life, you cannot confront directly with people. So that is the society nowadays, and we don't make that kind of films. That is what I believe. When I see films in the past, I always think like, oh, but why? How could they make these films? And then I think, okay, because there was a different world. That is the thing that I was trying to say. So to answer your question, now those things would be inconceivable nowadays. And
that takes me to the next topic, which is music. And I think musicians are in similar shoes as filmmakers or writers or any sort of artists, because like I think both of us are old enough to remember that the art was the place of rebellion. Like we would say things that others don't want to hear, and we'll be praised for this. There will be an applause for us to tell the wrong thing, especially among the youth. The youth would appreciate that. We will call out their parents, their teachers. It's not like that anymore. So I think like both of us are big rock fans. There is some decline when it comes to rock, because rock is anything but not conformist.
I can tell you a story, a brief story that can give you an idea, just because it's a personal story. When I edited, post-produced my feature film, there was this guy I got to know that he did sound post-production, and he was very good at it. So I said, thank you very much. I will exchange the favor when I have a chance. He's a musician. All right. So one day he told me, I need you to shoot my video clip. And that was in 2019. So he shot the video clip, not exactly my cup of tea, but, it was his music and stuff. 3 years later, he told me, could you film my next video clip? I said, well, yeah, I can do that. If it's during Christmas time, I don't have school, I don't have university, I can do that. So we meet in a coffee shop. We have a coffee, and we're discussing this. He says, I changed genre. I said, okay, you change genre. Right. Yeah, because I think I found a way to be after the algorithm, Spotify algorithm. And I was like, that's exactly what people shouldn't do. I mean, you should make something to express yourself and choose the genre that you like, not because somebody else might like it, but because that is the right genre for you. That could be pop, that could be blues, that could be jazz, that could be black metal. That doesn't matter. That it has to be derived for you. But if you run after an algorithm, you're not going to go anywhere, because that proves that you don't have that drive that I was talking about before.
Yes.
I didn't say anything because I don't like to destroy the dreams of people. I mean, or supposedly dream. And at that point, I said, okay, I shot it. I saw it when it was finished, and I was like, yeah, well, that is the typical Spotify product. So when he got up to, I got these thousands of people who watched it, who listened to it, who downloaded it. He was so happy, but I was like, I don't know, this is not what I think of a musician, should do. I'm not a musician, but I had a few young students that I always encouraged to express themselves like that. And I have some ex-students that invited me to their gigs. They shaped up a band. So far, they're 15, 16 years old. They're still doing cover songs. So they don't produce something of their own, but they have to start somewhere. So I'm happy that somebody's still, into something that may lead them to something else. But that is what I think. Music is more immediate. I mean, when it comes to films, you need a team. Unless you come up with a documentary, then in that case, you can work alone. Music, you can work alone. It's best if you are in a band, if you have other people, but if that's not easy to deal with them, there's always something happening there. But you still, you get a guitar, you get any other instrument that gets you going, and you can do something. You can express yourself. I was thinking about myself this summer. I buy a guitar and I start playing myself. Since I have time, that I haven't done it yet, to be honest. But something I was thinking about, because I said I either do that, and then instead I wrote a screenplay. I launched a YouTube channel, but it was there because I said I'm not that young, but I don't see myself looking for success. I see myself looking for a way to channel things, and music is the most immediate way to do that. I sometimes people think that I'm more into films because I produce something myself, but it's not like that. I mean, music is the real deal for me, but just that I don't play instruments, but I went to concerts since I was a kid, and I discussed this even in live streaming shows in my own channel. I rarely talk cinema, but I talk music most of the time.
Yeah, it's funny because we know each other for many years, but I'm the same. Like, I'm a writer, but if I have to choose between not spending time with books, or stepping a step or walking away from music, I would rather get rid of the books. Like, I could not imagine living without music. Like, it's just the way it is. Like, as a consumer, like, music for me is number one. Like, I cannot imagine a life where music is not present. Books, yeah, of course, I will miss them. Paintings, of course, they are very inspirational. I wrote a book inspired on an Irish painter. Cinema, I watch movies from time to time, but music, that I think to be a very, very sad existence. I cannot even think of that. Trying to combine the two here. Did you ever consider doing a documentary, and let's say about one of your favorite bands? And let's say you are given that opportunity. Who would that be and why?
Right. It's the same thing as cinema in that sense. I love bands that had a great success. I had a live about my 10 favorite bands like 3 weeks ago, and one of the 10 bands that I mentioned were Black Sabbath, and then a week later or 2 weeks later, Ozzy died. I said, okay, at least you can see that I chose them before he died, not because I was emotionally involved in that when I have to make it a decision.
Before the algorithm.
Before the algorithm, and now he's playing a lot Sabbath or Ozzy solo. But again, I'm more into those bands that were not very successful, but influenced other bands to do great things. So speaking of the 60s, I'm a big fan of the Sonics, of the Velvet Underground, of the Stooges. These are bands that to me meant a lot because they didn't sell. They were the opposite of sellouts. They didn't sell, but they inspired a lot of people to take an instrument and play. Similarly, the only band that I saw more than once, and this band I saw it 4 times, 3 times in Rome and once in Dublin, in 2016 in Dublin, is Mudhoney, this Seattle grunge band that was the only band that left Sub Pop alive before they produced Nirvana. Before they would have failed without Mudhoney, but they could sell this little bit that was barely enough to keep existing. And Nirvana were their supporting band on a few occasions. They were opening for them because they had a great respect, and they were considered the most important band in Seattle when Seattle was nothing. Then the big thing started, September 91, we all know the story, and a few bands made it. They never made it in terms of commercial success. And that really made me sad because whenever I went to see them, the shows always in small places like 200 people, they're not big stadium like 60,000 or something. No, they were not that kind of band. A band that you really felt it, like we are on the same level. I mean, you are up the stage, I'm down here, but I can see the vibe. I mean, we are communicating. So it would be about them because they still play nowadays, and they've been existing for almost 40 years now. And they always had to do some other side jobs to support themselves, you know. But still, for people like me, they are in their top 10 list. I always put them between 1 and 3rd in my personal preferences, you know. So it would be about Mahoney, yes.
Yeah. If you would now do some quick travel and all of a sudden you'll be in Ireland, what would be the thing that you'll be more interested in exploring? In other words, what are you missing the most that you cannot access in Italy and in Ireland is available?
Well, I would like to go to the Cliffs of Moher because for some reason I never went there. So the
No
idea,
way. You were never in the Cliffs of Moher.
no, no.
You know, that's one of those places where everyone goes. It's like sorry to cut you off, but the last time I was there, it was unbearable because it's so popular now. You know, it's like the Coliseum in Rome. Like you go there and what you or the Fountain di Trevi, all you see is people. You don't see the fountain.
All right.
That kind of experience.
But the idea is that, you know, to go to the west side of Ireland somewhere and see. I have a friend here. He's Irish, Tim. He cannot watch us because he went to Ireland yesterday for the summer. He's a colleague. He's a teacher.
Yeah, he can watch
where
tomorrow.
He lives.
He can watch tomorrow. This will be.
No, but the thing is, he said, well, where he lives, there's no internet. So there is no connection. I mean, he has to go up a hill. Apparently, there is a hill there in Clare, where he lives, or nearby, and he has to go up this hill, and there he gets one tick of connection, a little bit of connection, where he goes in the night just to respond to see what messages you received. But during the day, he paints houses. Does these summer jobs, you know, when schools are closed, and he has no connection with anybody because he has no internet there. So where the world is a little bit backward, but you feel it's real, you know, it feels like, you know, analog in a way. I would like to do that. I would go back to Cork because every time I go there, I feel back at home, even though I lived much less than in Dublin, but for some reason I feel connected with the place. And maybe I will go to Donegal. I will go to Donegal because I've never been there. They say that they surf there. I don't know if it's true, but that's what they were telling me at the time. In Dublin, I would just wander around without any purpose, and then at some point stop somewhere. It doesn't make any difference if here or there, because there's no single place that I miss more than another. It would be more the general atmosphere. Yeah,
it changed a lot. Like Dublin is not the same place.
So they tell me. I was never back, so I'm curious.
Yeah, you never came back since you left.
No.
Yeah, because that's one thing that I enjoy is a return to places where I've lived. So there is this thing of I'm not from there. I spent a couple of years living in that place, and then I returned. So it's like going home, but not exactly. So I think it's like one of the most privileges you have as an expat is you can avail of that experience, which is returning to a place that is yours without being.
Yeah, you're not the total stranger. Yeah.
Yes. So that is great. Yeah. Did you experience that, let's say, in London? Because you were in London when you were living in Ireland.
I went back many times. I went back to Sweden. I'd like to go back to Ireland. For me, the problem is that I never have time off unless it's, you know, the summer because schools are closed, or Christmas. But these are the moments in which going there is very popular. So I never find flights that are affordable and stuff like that. But eventually I will have to go. I still have a bank account in Ireland, by the way, with 200 euro in that account, but still has.
Well, that's a good reason to come here. Huh?
Yeah.
If for nothing else, yeah. Talk to me about Sweden. you left and you documented things you're not that happy with. Let's try to talk about the positive ones, because I'm sure there were
Oh,
a couple.
absolutely. Sweden was the first place I ever lived abroad. I was an exchange student and an Erasmus student, a university student, and I loved it. And I loved it, and it seemed the perfect country. That is the problem, you know, when you start to build your expectations so high. University was very manageable. You had your own room in the student house, a lot of parties, a lot of pleasant moments, efficiency and all. So I thought, why not? I mean, that was my Erasmus, but maybe it could be my life. I mean, obviously, I'm not going to have the same freedom that I was when I was a student, but maybe as a worker. And I went back, trying that life after Cork. At first, I thought, okay, maybe I can see the difference between being a student and being a worker there. But then it was efficiency, very, very high. Cleanliness, standards, everything is quite impressive. So if you go as a tourist, you just notice these things. And partying, interesting, definitely. Problem is, when it comes to accommodation, that is a disaster, because you either buy or you're bound to move around every few months, basically, because there's no way you can rent something properly, because people are in a queue to rent for since they were born, so for 20-25 years. And so you can only find that way of living in UK. This guy is renting out, so it's a sublet for 3 months. It could be even a year and a half. It happened to me, but it depends. And that is one problem. Working is not that simple. There are not so many jobs around, and I had mine, but at some point the company relocated to Malta, so I lost my job out of nowhere, and in a flash, and I had to reinvent myself. So I was writing for websites as a freelancer. I was teaching Italian. I was doing things that I had to improvise. So that is the drawback. So working and finding a proper accommodation. When it comes to standards, salaries, and efficiency, partying, that's a good trade-off if you have the rent. But if you cannot live there, it's hard. I mean, if you cannot be stable there, It makes it hard, So that is that.
Well, and the other good thing is they are very much into rock and heavy metal.
Yeah, especially Gothenburg. I lived there for a year. I lived 4 years in Stockholm and 1 in Gothenburg. My second year was in Gothenburg, where I was studying the language, because when I was studying, I was only doing it in English. But second year I was learning Swedish. You remember I was hired from Pfizer because Swedish was my market. And a lot more rock and roll in Gothenburg. There was also in Stockholm, but I was very sad when I went back after leaving that my historical rock places shut down. So and so that was very sad. But rock and roll is a big thing. If I compare the average rock culture there with here, there's where I am at the moment, there's no possible comparison. Then I hang out with the similar type of people, so at the end of the day, for me, it's the same in my personal life. But if I detect things around, it's completely different. That was a good thing about living there.
Yeah, and I think it's another place that changed a lot, in terms of safety. I think it's not the same as it was, especially the likes of Malmo. And
okay, these are my Swedish books. One of them, let's see if I find it. I don't see it anymore. Yeah. That I bought when I was still living there. So we're talking about 2009, maybe. Was this because it was becoming
That's Swedish mafia, if I understand well.
Yes. So it was about all the gangs. So the gangs from Sweden control this thing. Those from Albania, those from ex-Yugoslavia control this thing. Those from other parts, their areas control these things. It was becoming big, and then it exploded at some point. The good thing is I read the papers every day to keep the language alive. I have a Swedish friend here, so I can practice with her, but we don't meet very often, so I tend to read the newspaper. And the thing is, they have their fights outside the center of the cities or towns. So a lot of people don't see these things, so they read it in the papers. But apparently, it's become one of the most violent nations, considering the dimension and the density of population in Europe. Top 3, like if you consider how many people are injured or die in this gang fights, that's quite surprising. But on the other hand, they always thought about prevention as a way to deal with these things. So when that doesn't work, they don't have the repression. It's either prevention or nothing. And when prevention doesn't work, there's not much else that they have in the toolbox.
Yeah. The other place I want to discuss briefly is London. So how was life in the capital of England?
I was in London for just a few months in my life, so I'm not the most indicated person to discuss London. But even though at the beginning I had a good time as a poor, cheap student, being there in the summer for a few months, doing summer jobs and stuff, considering the second time I was there and all the times I went there to visit my friends, I'm under the impression that London is not exactly my cup of tea. Because for how I live, London would, even though it has endless possibilities, which I would never take advantage of, but I would do the same type of life that I did in Ireland, except it would be much harder to do it in London because I could never meet my friends, or hardly ever, because of the distances. I could never do the things that I wanted to do because everything was so hard to do, even if apparently everything was there. In Dublin, I didn't have so many things that I had in London, but a lot of things that I could do, I did them. So my impression is that they're not exactly the same thing, but I chose Ireland versus England because for what I was interested, it was more accessible in Ireland. That's my point of view.
Let's wrap up with let's wrap up with a couple of things. I would like you to provide some advice for someone who is willing to step in the filmmaking industry, and they're hesitant because they know they believe, so they have some understanding of the field. They have the desire, the passion, and they are confident on their skills. But because they haven't really done it and it's something new to them, they are not sure if they should go ahead or not. So what would be a word of encouragement for someone who is not 100% confident?
Well, I know that sometimes there are doubts that can come up here and there, but if somebody feels they're not sure, there could be an indication maybe they shouldn't be doing this because it's a lot of frustrations, a lot of downs, some ups, a lot of downs, and along the way you are swearing every possible saint, wondering why you decided to do this thing, but you know that you cannot quit because this is you. This is essentially you. You have to do it because this is who you are. And if you don't feel that way, don't do it, because otherwise it's just frustration and no reward. But if you think the most important thing for you is to come up with something, to tell something, then you will be able to overcome every single obstacle in the process of producing something, and there will be endless obstacles. Whenever you think you've overcome them all, something else comes up. That's for certain. everybody tells me the same story, the same story that I live myself. But if you really feel the desire, you don't need the experience. You need a passion, because experience comes with projects, and then you need to find other people like you that enjoy this thing as much as you do, and together you will get there. Together you will make it. If you really want to do it, you'll find a way to do it. So that's the thing.
Yeah, no, 100%. It resonates with the way I perceive the path myself. Like, you need to be on the mix. You should be able to build connections and not be afraid to show up. And as you said, like, not everything is going to be pinkish all the time, but that's just how life is. Would you let us know, like, what are you working on at the moment? You mentioned you finished a screenplay, so you also have a YouTube channel about tennis. So if you share what's on the pipeline.
I finished the first draft of a screenplay called The Key to the Ring. I was mentioning the initial scene before when I asked my friend. So it's the theme there is that, are people the same? I mean, what we call good guys and bad guys, at the end of the day, they are just two sides of the same coin, or not. That is the theme. I finished the first draft. I will put it aside for another week, and then I will go through that again and see where it works, where it needs rewriting and stuff. Then I launched some weeks ago this Italian YouTube channel called Le Leggende del Tennis, so the legends of tennis, because I would like to give those in Italy who are now interested in tennis, because the number one in the world is Italian, Yannick Sinner, some information that they lack to understand the game, to understand the history of the game, because I've always believed that if you don't know where you come from, you don't understand where you're going. So you need to have some background to understand reality of the moment. So that is the reason of the. I'm not even monetizing the videos, because I'm using a little. It's essentially me talking and explaining things or commenting things, but I use also some images that I can use without monetizing my videos, because they need to see what I'm talking about. So some old champions, some old moments and stuff like that. But people are responding at the moment, so I'm happy with that.
Yeah, very good. So I'm going to put those videos in the description, or those links that people can find them, enjoy, and perhaps interact with you. So Giorgio, it was good talking to you. It has been, I don't know how many years, but maybe 10 or so since we spoke in a verbal way.
8 or something, yes. Must have been something like that, yes.
So let us know when you are coming to Ireland.
Absolutely, and thank you for having me here tonight.
Yeah, I also need to go back to Italy, because I haven't been to Italy for more than 10 years, and now I have more and more connections due to the podcast on Wednesday. So I might go to Italy next year. I'll let you know. There's maybe on the north, but you won't be that far, so we can meet up there as well.
Right, absolutely.
Right, so just for the viewers, I want to thank for those who stayed with us and enjoyed this real and raw conversation. If you want to express your satisfaction, the best way to do so is to press the like button below. If you haven't subscribed, that's fine. The subscribe button is still there for you to be aware of what we do going forward in this channel. And if you know someone who may benefit from the conversation I had here this evening, make sure to share. So this was live, but this will be here in the YouTube database going forward. I think we will touch base on a lot of evergreen topics. So even if they don't watch it today, it will be still relevant, I believe, in the next month, year, or God knows where. So I want to wish everyone a good evening, and I hope I see you very soon. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.